Okay, today we're going to take a look at the latest Top Coder challenge. Um, this one is called largest arrangement, and what it does is the function will take in an array of numbers, and that array of numbers is being asked to be resorted and combined to create a string of the largest possible value. Okay, so in the README file, I've gone ahead and written or copied that description and given the examples and showed exactly what's going to happen. Um, Again, the challenge says that the purpose of this challenge, or the goal of this challenge, is to learn how to create your own test file. So that's a little bit of what I've done today. Is I've gone ahead and I've created a test file to actually test these values. Now the stack I'm choosing is Ruby, because I've been working in it for a little while with these challenges, and so the README file is going to look very familiar if you used my Ruby files before. Basically, just build out using the gem file. So bundle install bin stubs and then bin slash rspec dash dash init to add the rspec subset to the build. And then you can run these tests by using the bundle exec rspec slash or spec slash largest underscore arrangement underscore spec dot rb, and that will run all the tests from this challenge. Okay, so let's go ahead and take a look at the spec file first. Now the spec file, of course, is going to require relative, so the file that I'm testing should be in the same folder or directory as the spec file. Then I'm going to describe the spec, and that's going to run the test. So the first test is just to test whether or not the function or the method returns the greatest value from a combination of numbers. We'll say, okay, so any numbers passed into the function are going to be checked against their equal value of these numerics here. Now, if the numeric is larger than 1,000, I've gone ahead and put the underscores into the build to separate and make the number more easily readable. The next test is actually going to test to see what happens with an empty array. As per the challenge, it should return the string empty array, and it's going to handle an array of length 1, which technically could be placed in the test sub here, but I just wanted to make sure that it was clear that it was handling an array of length 1. And then the final test is testing to see what would happen if any negative numbers were in the array. Now, if a negative number is in the array, it will make it difficult, if not impossible, to rearrange those numbers into any sort of order because of that negative value. Again, the numbers are being turned into strings when they're returned, so that negative value would more or less get in the way of that. And should there be a negative, then the string only positive numbers are accepted should be returned. Okay, so that's the spec file. Again, 4 very simple tests and the values that should be returned for each of these tests. Okay, so let's go ahead and get out of the spec file now and make sure that we're in the proper directory. Okay, so let me clear the screen. Okay, so let's take a look at the actual arrangement file. So I've defined a method to give the largest arrangement of integers in a given array. As we saw in the rspec file, whatever numbers are put in, whether they be single digits, multiple digits, whatever, as long as they're not negative, this method should rearrange those numbers and then return those numbers as a string. And it does this by returning empty array if the array is empty. If it's not empty, it's going to cycle through the array And if any of the numbers are less than 0, it's going to return the only positive numbers are accepted. So those are our two catch statements. Should anything inappropriate be in these arrays. So if the array is empty or the array contains a negative number, we have two catch statements that will catch those invalidations and return string values that let us know that the values were invalid. If the values are valid, however, I'm going to create an empty string array, and I'm going to then sort the array. After I've sorted the array, I am going to map out the values in the array to string values. Then after I do that, I'm going to call, or I'm then going to join each of those string values in the sorted array. Now, this sort here, this sort method, is a helper method that I've built in. And the reason I built in this helper method is once we have those strings, we need to rearrange those strings in an order that will provide us with the largest possible number. Now, there are actually two helper methods for this largest arrangement method. The first is sort, and this is just a simple merge sort. So it's going to take those numbers, break them down into their atomic units, and then it's going to sort them via some kind of comparison. Now, I say some kind of comparison because typically if we're dealing with numbers or characters, I can compare their values and just let it go as that. If the character or number is less than, it'll go to the left. It's right, or greater than, it'll go to the right. However, with this largest arrangement, I'm not comparing numbers or characters, I'm comparing strings. And so what I had to do is I had to build in a special method to compare these strings. And so that's what I've done. And as I said, this sort is a merge sort, and it's going to use the helper method merge, which just kind of breaks up the whole merge sort itself, so that we're not overloading each method. And it also uses this other helper method called compare. Now, as I said, because I'm not comparing numbers or characters, I had to build my own compare method. And so what I've done is I take in two values with the compare. So if we go up here and look at the merge method, it'll run through, and then it calls this method, this compare method, against the left and right values. Now, if we remember something about our merge sort, it takes those left and right values from the first values in each array, each subarray, and then it's going to compare them and zip them together in that new sorted order. So that's what's happening here. Now, with the compare method itself, it's going to build up two values, okay? And then it's going to compare those values against one another. Now, when it takes in that left and right value, whatever that left and right value be, so let's say I'm passing in 4 and 50, it's going to test whether or not the numbers 450 or 450 is greater than the number 504. And it does this by building that string. So I've called the left, or one string value, left to right, and it's making that left value into a string and the right value into a string and concatenating them together. Then it's doing the same thing right to left, so it's taking the right value first and then the left value and concatenating them together as strings. Then it's comparing those strings, which will be changed into integers, against one another. And it's going to return a Boolean value of true or false if left to right is greater than right to left. Now, again, that's what I'm using up here, that Boolean value that's returned in the compare method. So it's comparing left 0 and right 0. And if it's true, it's going to shift the left value into the sorted array. If it's false, it's going to do the same. It's going to append or push the shifted value from that left array into the sorted array, unless it's false, and then it will push the shifted value from the right array into the sorted array. And then recursively, or until the left and right values are empty, it's going to continue to make that comparison. Once it's made that comparison, it's going to concatenate whatever's left with the sorted array, left and right arrays, and then it's going to return that value from sort, and that's what's actually being joined up here. At the end of the largest arrangement method. Okay, so let's go ahead and run these tests, and this is just to show that it works. So the first test, let me comment out these, is to actually run my test case that I've built. So in order to do that, again, if I go back to the README file, I should be able to just copy and paste that executable. So I'm going to paste that in, make this a little bit bigger so we can actually see. Okay, and as you can see, it ran 4 tests and each of them passed. Now, what we need to do now is I want to show what's actually happening here. So let me go ahead and uncomment all of this, and I'm running those test cases just as we saw in the test file. So I've ran each case, and I'm going to put the values of that case up here, and then I'm actually going to run the method, and then this extra puts, or put to string, is just to add space between our test cases when I run the file. So let's go ahead and do that. Okay, so as you can see, each of these test cases are run, and they end up giving the correct values. So with the array 458 and 145, as it says, it should be 8504145. And of course, once I run the method, that is exactly what's returned. Same thing with 4, 40, and 7. It should return 7440, and that is exactly what it does. And it does that for each of the cases. Now, if an empty array is passed into the method, it should return empty array, and it does. And finally, if an array has a negative value, like this last array down here has the value of -50, it should return only positive numbers are accepted. And as we can see here, that's exactly what it does. Again, if you have further questions or comments, please feel free to message me in the forum, and I will be happy to answer them. Thank you.